best friend asked me, "Did you hear about the prison break?" Her voice was a whisper when she asked me that question, like she didn't want to believe it was true. We were sitting at my kitchen table, mugs of coffee gone cold between us. The air felt heavy, like the house itself was holding its breath. "No," I said slowly. "What prison break?" Her eyes got big as she turned her head towards the TV that was on, but muted. I hadn't been paying attention to it. I had been complaining about my new manager at work and about the growing list of things I needed to do. But now, everything inside me went still. "The correctional?" I asked, scared of the answer. She barely nodded at me. I stared at her as my vision went blurry. That was his prison, the one where my ex-husband had been serving his 10-year sentence for domestic assault. He had been there just long enough for me to find peace and start a life of my own, not under his control. "How many escaped?" I asked with more calm than I felt. "They said 6 got out, but they haven't released any names yet." I leaned back in my chair and rubbed my hands over my face. "It's probably nothing," I said automatically. "They'll catch them." "They will," she said. But I could tell she didn't believe it either. I'd spent years training myself to hide my feelings and to not panic. He loved it when he could see fear in my eyes. For months after his arrest, I had jumped at loud noises, or even when the doorbell rang. I had been able to put that behind me with therapy and a new town. I told myself I was fine and that he couldn't get to me anymore. I got up and grabbed the remote so that I could unmute the TV just as the news anchor started talking. Her voice was too calm for the words she was saying, something about how a riot had broken out and the escaped prisoners had used that as cover for their getaway. "Prison officials have not confirmed the identity of those who escaped," she said. I stared at the photos of the prison as they flashed across the screen. There was a hole cut in the fence and a car belonging to a guard was missing. The orange prisoner uniforms made me remember the day in court when he looked right at me as they read his guilty verdict and sentence. The smile he'd given me still haunted me. My best friend put a hand on my shoulder. "Are you okay?" "Yeah," I lied. "It's probably not him." I couldn't sit there and stare at the TV anymore. I sent my best friend home with a promise that I would call if I heard anything. I locked the door and even pushed a heavy table in front of it to add to the security. For the rest of the day, I tried to keep busy. I did laundry and cleaned the house, even though it wasn't messy at all. I broke down and decided to bake cookies to help keep me occupied. I just needed to keep busy so my mind didn't start playing tricks on me. Still, every creak or car door closing made me flinch. By the time evening rolled around, my nerves were shot. I was just deciding a shower would be a good idea when the news came back on. This time, the anchor was much more alert and her voice was sharper. My chest tightened as she began to read off the names of the escapees. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead and palms. Goosebumps made the little hairs on my body stand up. Then, she reached the end of the list, and I almost had hope before I heard his name leave her mouth. The rest of what she said sounded like static. I stood there staring at the screen as the sound of my own heartbeat in my head. He was out. I didn't think. I just grabbed a duffel bag and shoved clothes and my toothbrush inside, rushing to also pack my laptop and chargers. I texted my best friend and let her know that I was going to my parents' house for a few days. She agreed that was the best idea. A 3-hour drive to my parents' house just made my nerves even more frayed. I didn't stop, I didn't listen to music, and I was suspicious of every car that followed me. By the time I finally got there, I was barely holding on to my sanity. My parents hugged me as they met me at the door. They had made up the guest room for me, and finally feeling safe, I slept for hours without budging. I stayed there for a week. The news said that 2 of the inmates had been caught in another state and that the hunt for the others was going strong. I tried to convince myself that my ex had gone somewhere far away and wasn't anywhere near here. I knew I eventually had to go back. I wasn't going to abandon the life I had built. The morning I drove home, the sun was bright and the temperature was cool. Everything looked the same, my apartment, my street, even the old maple tree outside of my window. I told myself that it was fine, that he was long gone to Mexico or some other country. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and dropped my keys on the counter. That's when I saw it, an empty coffee mug sitting in the sink, one I hadn't used in weeks. My stomach dropped. "Hey honey," he said with a smile as he stepped into view. "Miss me?"